Hello, and welcome to Stories from the 28th Division Archives. I am Dr. Walter Zapotocny. While working as the 28th Division Command Historian, I discovered stories in the archives that are not in the history books. In this episode, we are going to look at Second Lieutenant Frances Slanger, a nurse assigned to the 45th Field Hospital, co-located with the 28th Division in Elsenborn, Belgium, in October 1944. After their attacks across the Siegfried Line in September, the division received over 1,800 casualties and was sent to Elsenborn to rest and refit. On the 21st of October, the rain fell hard in Elsenborn. The area had been quiet for several days, and while lying on her cot, Lieutenant Slanger wrote a letter to Stars and Stripes newspaper. The editor was so impressed with her letter that they included it in their November 7, 1944 issue. The letter reads,
It is 0200 and I have been lying awake for an hour listening to the steady breathing of the other three nurses in the tent, thinking about some of the things we had discussed during the day. The fire was burning low and just a few live coals are on the bottom. With the slow feeding of wood and finally coal, a roaring fire is started. I couldn't help thinking how similar to a human being a fire is. If it is not allowed to run down too low, and if there is a spark of life left in it, it can be nursed back. So can a human being. It is slow, it is gradual, it is done all the time in these field hospitals and other hospitals at the ETO. We had read several articles in different magazines and papers sent in by grateful GIs praising the work of the nurses around the combat zones. Praising us. For what? I climbed back onto my cot. Lieutenant Ballard was the only one I had awakened. I whispered to her. Lieutenant Cox and Lieutenant Powers slept on. Fine nurses and great girls to live with. Of course, like in all families, an occasional quarrel, but these were quickly forgotten. I'm writing this by flashlight. In this light, it looks something like a dive. In the center of the tent are two poles, one part chimney, the other plain tent pole. Kindling wood lies in disorderly confusion on the damp ground. We don't have a tarp on the ground. A French wine pitcher filled with water stands by. The GIs say we rough it. We in our little tents can't see it. True, we are set up in tents, sleep on cots, and are subject to the temperament of the weather. We wade ankle deep in mud. You have to lie in it. We are restricted to our immediate area, a cow pasture or a hayfield, but then, who is not restricted? We have a stove and coal. We even have a laundry line in the tent. Our GI drawers are at this moment doing the dance of the pants, what with the wind howling in the tent precariously, the rain beating down, the guns firing, and me with a flashlight writing. It all adds up to a feeling of unrealness. Sure, we rough it, but in comparison to the way you men are taking it, we can't complain, nor do we feel that bouquets are due us. But you, the men behind the guns, the men driving our tanks, flying our planes, sailing our ships, building bridges. It is to you we doff our helmets. To every GI wearing the American uniform, for you we have the greatest admiration and respect. Yes, this time we are handing out the bouquets, but after taking care of some of your buddies, seeing them when they are brought in, bloody, dirty with earth, mud and grime, and most of them so tired. Somebody's brothers, somebody's fathers, somebody's sons, seeing them gradually brought back to life, to consciousness, and their lips separate into a grin when they first welcome you. Usually they kid, hurt as they are. It doesn't amaze us to hear one of them say, "Hiya, babe," or "Holy mackerel, an American woman." These soldiers stay with us but a short time, from 10 days to possibly 2 weeks. We have learned a great deal about our American boys and the stuff they are made of. The wounded do not cry. Their buddies come first. The patience and determination they show, the courage and fortitude they have is sometimes awesome to behold. It is we who are proud to be here. Rough it? No. It is a privilege to be able to receive you and a great distinction to see you open your eyes and with that swell American grin say, "Hiya, babe."
But Lieutenant Slanger never saw the acclaim her letter received. Quite unexpectedly, the 45th Field Hospital came under attack by German artillery. That evening, Frances Slanger was killed by a German shell. She was the first American nurse to die in the European theater of operations. Two other nurses were with her, were wounded. When the shelling began, Slanger and her friends huddled together, waiting for a chance to run for shelter. A shell fell in the middle of the hospital area, and fragments ripped through the tent, hitting the girls as they kneeled with their arms around each other. Her friends said that Frances knew she was dying, but uttered no word of complaint. Her chief concern was the grief her death would bring to her family in Boston. Short and brunette, she was one of the first nurses to land in France, wading ashore with the hospital platoon on June 10th, 1944. She was up to her neck in water and hung on to the belts of the men to keep from losing her head. From then on, Frances Slanger lived to serve the fighting men, always only a few miles ahead. On November 22nd, 1944, Stars and Stripes published a letter about her death. When the news broke of her death in Belgium, American soldiers across Europe responded with grief. Some even gave their aircraft her name in her memory. Initially buried in France in a military cemetery, her remains were repatriated in 1947 to be reinterred at the Independent Pride of Boston Cemetery in Roxbury. Boston's mayor was among the thousands who paid their respects at the ceremony. Slanger was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart, and in 1945 became the namesake of an Army hospital ship, the USAHS Frances Y. Slanger. If you like these stories, visit our website for more stories that were not in the history books. And please consider becoming a veteran or associate member of the 28th Division Association. Your tax-deductible membership will help us support the men and women of the division and help us to tell their stories. Until next time, roll on.